of Judges chapter 16. This is the story of Samson, who was a judge over Israel. And Israel in their history has had, and will have, several judges, and Samson is one of them. They didn't have a king, but God would raise up judges among them to rule over and to overthrow the enemy. And it almost seemed like it would go in cycles where the enemy would overcome them and enslave them, and they would cry out to the Lord in their burdens and their oppression, and God would then bring them a judge to overthrow the oppression of the enemy. And this is a story of his life. Many of you know who Samson is. Yes. Many of you know who Delilah is.
Yes. Yes.
The story has been repeated over and over. But let's read it here this morning and really see what we can get from his life. In verse 1 it says, "Now Samson went to Gaza and saw a harlot there, and went into her. When the Gezerites were told, Samson has come here. Then the Gezerites were told, Samson has come here. They surrounded the place and laid in wait for him all night at the gate of the city. They were quiet all night, saying, in the morning when it is daylight, we will kill him. And Samson laid low till midnight. When he rose at midnight, he took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and the two gateposts and pulled them up, bar and all. Put them on his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Afterwards, it happened that he loved a woman in the valley of Shorek, whose name was Delilah, and the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said, entice him and find out where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies, and with what you may be bound to afflict you. So Samson said to her, if you bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings, not yet dried, then I will become weak and be like any other man. So the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh bowstrings, not yet dried, and she bound him with them. Now when men were lying in wait, staying with her in the room, and she said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he broke the bowstrings as a brand of yarn breaks when it touches fire. And so the secret of his strength was not known. Then Delilah said to Samson, look, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now please tell me what you may be bound with. So he said to her, if you bind me securely with new ropes that have never been used, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. Therefore Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And men were lying in wait, staying in the room. But he broke them off his arms like a thread. And Delilah said to Samson, until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me what you may be bound with. And he said to her, if you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of the loom, so she wove it right tightly with the batten of the loom, and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he awoke from his sleep and pulled out the batten and the web from the loom, and she said to him, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times and have told me where your great and have not told me where your great strength lies. And it came to pass when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him so that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all his heart and said to her, no razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I become weak and be like any other man. And see, we see that it was daily that he was vexed, and that's just like sin and temptation, where it just comes again and again and again until those things are overcome. Amen? Amen. See, Samson was just kind of a half-hearted no, or he would just put her off or tell her other things, but he didn't really reject and do a firm no that he was going to not tell her. And I don't know about you, but that's a friend that's a friend you don't want to have. Amen? Delilah. If you have friends like that, who needs enemies, right? It says, when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up once more, for he has told me all his heart. So the lords of the Philistines came upon her, brought the money in their hand. Then she lured him to sleep on her knees and called for a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. Somebody say, his strength left him.
His strength left him.
And she said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. So I woke from his sleep and said, I will go out as before at other times and shake myself free. But he did not, knowing that the Lord had departed from him. Now that's an amazing statement, is that he didn't know that his strength had left him. He didn't know that, and didn't realize that those things had left him. And a lot of times in the same way, when we find ourselves backslidden or in sin, that really we're the last to know. Everybody else knows, it seems, but we seem to be the last to know. You ever notice that sometimes when God brings revival in our life, or that he renews us or brings us back